Hello, everyone.
Hello, welcome back to the G&T Podcast. My name is TJ.
And I am Gareth, and we are G&T, not
That
Gin and
was
Tonic,
G&T. Yeah,
because we're
get
awesome.
it? Because our names start with G and T,
Yes,
and
yes,
it
they
sounds
do.
like gin and tonic. It's funny when you explain the joke.
No, it's not.
How are you, Bummo? You're right.
I am very good.
Good.
You know, I've been waiting. I mean, since the last
Obsessed.
podcast we done,
Mm.
with the I can't say that without laughing. The giggling granny and the teacup poisoner. It sounds like a really bad like villain duo, doesn't it?
Sounds like a Scooby-Doo
It
cartoon. The
does.
Giggling Granny and the Teacup Poisoner.
It really does.
It's like a really, really bad Harry Potter film.
Yeah, like could you
Harry Potter
imagine
and the Giggling
Voldemort
Granny.
being, the teacup giggling granny poisoner? Oh, I don't
It's
know.
a very poison themed. Yes, yesterday?
It
Was it?
was.
No, it
No, it
wasn't.
wasn't
It was last
yesterday.
week.
It was last week. It was, yeah. It was last week. It was.
Mm.
It was a very. And the funny thing is, we've got these weird coincidences, haven't we, where we do cases and we pick them at random. Like I don't
Yeah.
know what you're doing. You know what I've done
I
because I've had
basically,
to tell you.
yeah, I just go onto BuzzFeed and type in mysteries. That's
Yeah,
basically what I
BuzzFeed's
do.
great for that.
I'm
That's where I
joking, by
got
the way.
mine. BuzzFeed,
I'm
I
joking.
do watch BuzzFeed Unsolved on YouTube. I mean, they haven't done anything for a
Oh,
while
yeah.
now. Yeah, they I can't remember the
I'm not
names.
gonna lie. I'm genuinely thought their channel was dead. I thought
It
BuzzFeed didn't
is.
exist anymore.
It is dead. Yeah, but I want about their earlier stuff that are still on YouTube.
Oh yeah, okay, fair.
With Ryan and Shane, they do a lot of like really cool stuff, like ghost hunting stuff and murder mystery stuff. It's great. It's really cool.
Nice.
So yeah, you know I've been really impatient with this one
Mm.
this week because
Every day since like what's the day today? Tuesday. Every day since like Saturday, you've been like, I really want to do it. I really want to talk about it.
Yeah, and by the way, we were meant to fucking edit this and do it all tomorrow, but I'm like, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I got to talk about this today.
You have a day off tomorrow, and instead of like doing it on your day off, hang on, I'm going to burp again. Sorry, folks. That's what happens when I
Bless
drink
you.
tea. Yeah, because we were supposed to do it tomorrow because you have an actual day off, so we had like all day to do it, and then you were like, "No, I want to do it today. I want to get home from work and do it
I
today."
know because my thought process on the whole thing is once I can get this case out of my head, it's finished, and I can go on to something
Yeah.
else and then bug you for another week about another one.
I know you haven't watched it, but you just remind me of there's a theme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia where Charlie Day is like obsessing over this like guy that doesn't exist.
You're right.
And you've probably seen the meme template where it's a guy with like brown hair and short. He's got a cigarette in his mouth and he's like pointing at a board with like loads of threads and like
Yeah.
loads of like conspiracy things on the wall.
Yes,
That comes from Always Sunny, and basically you've been like that for about 4 days now.
I have, and the thing is, I need to talk about it, which we'll get into today, this episode, and I'm gonna go first because I gotta get this out of my head because you went first last time, and I swear to Christ, if I wait any longer, I will literally explode, or I will become this person and just go and just fucking hijack a plane for my own sake of sanity to see if you actually did it because it's absolutely mad.
On that note, tell us who you're doing, like what?
Okay.
Oh right, well, hang on. We should probably explain. Right, this is the format we're going to go with from now on. By the way, just so people understand, because it's all a bit hectic with us, and we don't really make a lot of sense before we start reading off stuff.
No.
So essentially, what's going to happen is 1 week we'll do murder cases, like serial killers or something like that, and we'll pick one each. We'll research them and we'll tell each other about it.
Mm-hmm.
That was the last week's one. Then the week after, this week, we'll pick an unsolved mystery that happened somewhere in the world. We'll do the same. We'll research it. We'll tell each other about it. But the criteria has to be that it's been unsolved.
Yeah.
So the case happened and it still hasn't been solved.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that there can't be official, in quotation marks, like official answers or authority saying, "Oh yeah, it's this." As long as there are like holes that are enough to be like, we're not satisfied with the official answer, then we can class it as an unsolved mystery. The week after that, so the third week, we'll do conspiracy theories. So we'll pick like a conspiracy theory or anything, something wild probably, and then we'll talk about it, whether we believe in it or not, and like the arguments to back it and deny it.
Yeah.
And then the week after, yeah, go on.
I was just going to say the conspiracy theory ones are probably going to be a little bit longer. They're
Oh,
probably going to be a bit
100%.
longer.
Yeah, because it'll just be me and you just absolutely rambling. Yeah. And then the week after that, so the fourth week, will be us choosing a case together and discussing it together properly for the whole episode.
Absolutely.
So just to sync that up, week 1 will be murders and serial killers. Week 2 will be unsolved mysteries. Week 3 will be conspiracy theories, and week 4 will be a single case. Whether it's one of those 3 categories or not is up to us. And then we'll just talk about it. So this week we are doing unsolved mysteries. So without further ado, would you like to tell everyone who you're doing today, like what case you're doing?
Yes, so I am doing the case of D.B. Cooper, the famous gentleman who hijacked a lovely plane out of America, and basically got away with 200 grand and never to be seen or even caught. So yeah, my case is D.B. Cooper. I've gone absolutely mad on this man.
Just for context as well, the only context for the audience, because I know we spoke about this yesterday, but I know nothing about DB Cooper. Like, I know that there was a sketch of him. I know he wasn't found. I know that he hijacked a plane and he stole some money, or he had money, that he was given money or something.
Yeah.
That's all I know about him. I know nothing else apart from that.
And just for the audience's point of view again, when I say that I spoke to you about it yesterday, I literally tried, and he shut me down every time I tried to talk about him.
We got into... Yeah, you got into like base level, like surface level stuff that I already knew, and then the moment you were like, "Yeah, but like the even crazier thing was," I was like, "No, shut up, fuck off."
I couldn't help it. I was in podcast mode from yesterday. So yes, I am doing DB Cooper, which we'll get onto his name as well because it's technically wrong. But that's what I'm doing. Who are you doing before I start my case?
Oh God. Okay. I'm doing a case known as the Sodder children disappearance.
Okay.
SODDER children disappearance. It was a not to go into too much detail, but it was an incident that happened in West Virginia in 1945. No, I've got that completely wrong. It's an incident that happened in West Virginia in 19. Let's rewind again. I've done this twice now. It was in 1945 in West Virginia. I thought it was 1947, but that's another bit. Anyway, carry on.
So we've got D.B. Cooper and the Sodder family. That's our cases today.
Yes.
So I'm gonna try and just keep it as us talking about this one more. I mean, we'll go through the case, about what happened and stuff like that. But I want to relatively keep it because it's class. It's not a conspiracy theory because it happened, right? There's people, eyewitness accounts that were there, but it's so unraveling about why.
It's what comes after.
It's weird. So, D.B. Cooper, basically in 1971, on the 24th of November, got a ticket to go to Seattle, Washington. And back then, I believe he paid $20 to go to Seattle.
From where? Do we know from where?
I had it, but it's gone. I did have it, but it's gone somewhere. Hang on.
Well, we know it was in a plane, so
it wasn't that far. It was literally from Portland, Oregon. That's what it was, Portland. So from Portland to Seattle, it only takes like half an hour. It's not a massively long journey. So he gets on this plane, and he's very generic looking. What I mean by that is he's very businessman type. He's got a suit on, the tie. You know, he's looking very smart, and he's just looking very generic. He's just like what would you class as a normal sort of American businessman. No sort of features about him that makes him stand out from anybody else. So apparently he was. Go on.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I'd like to clarify. It's not a half an hour journey from Portland to Oregon. It's about nearly 3 hours.
Is it really?
By car.
Yeah, but that's by car.
Plane is probably about half an hour. Sorry, my bad. Carry on. I thought it was on plane.
Oh, Jesus Christ. So, yes. So basically he gets on this plane and he is boarded up. He's got this nice little sort of briefcase thing with him. And he sits down, and when the plane is up in the air, he's drinking a bourbon and soda. He ordered that before the plane took off, but he's basically drinking a bourbon and soda, and apparently he's quite a heavy smoker too. So this is happening around 3 p.m. ish, right? So he's up in the air, and he hands a stewardess a note, and on the note it's basically saying he's got a bomb. But the funny thing is she gets the note and she puts it in her pocket without reading it. So, so he has to literally tap on her shoulder and say, "Miss, do you mind reading the note?"
Can you read the note, please?
Yeah, it's very, it's
very important.
Yeah. So
he got hard off.
Yeah, basically, yeah. He wanted her to sit with him. So that it's not sort of like a hostagey thing, but it sort of is. So he reads this note. It's like, oh shit, he's got a bomb, and she asks to see this thing. So he opens it up, and from what I could see, and a lot of the other things that I've researched, it looks like a cartoon bomb, like in the essence that it's.
So are there photos of it then? Are there?
No, but from what witness accounts of it, because he took the bomb with him in the end. So the witness accounts of it from the stewardesses is that you've got this briefcase with red sticks with wires and whatever. It looks like one of those sort of cliche bombs you get in like films.
Typical stereotypical bomb. If you described a bomb to like a 12-year-old, they'd be like, "Oh, I'm gonna draw a bomb," and that was what that was.
Yeah, like you know, like the whole like sticks of dynamite, like the red like things of dynamite and like the wires and all that. That sort of thing. Very sort of Looney Tune-esque bomb sort of thing. Nice. So he's got this bomb, and he basically demands that she writes down what he's told her about what he's got. So he goes to the captain. She goes to the captain when being told by DB Cooper that there's this bomb and you're going to go and tell the blokes that you want this. So she's going to the cockpit and they're like, oh yeah, there's a man in the back and he's got a bomb and he wants 200 grand in cash in $20 bills. So they're like, okay, I don't know, I don't know what the hell to do with this. So they basically go along with him. They have to because he's a man with a bomb.
You wouldn't ignore him, would you?
No, it's just very odd. But the thing is, when this is happening and they're flying, and he makes a plan to go to land at Seattle, excuse me, then to refuel, get the money. And he asks for 4 parachutes, 2 front and 2 back. So you've got the normal parachutes on the back, which like from films of people gliding through the air. The front one becomes like a reserve in case the back one doesn't go up. But they give him the police and whatever give him. They offer him a military parachute, and he refuses and says, "No, I want civilian ones." The only thing with that is the civilian ones you can't steer while you're in the air. So yeah, a little bit weird. And when he was given the 200 grand, he said he wanted it in a certain like thing that he can sort of carry with him, but they gave it him in something completely opposite. So he ended up having to cut up one of the parachutes and use the rope from the parachutes to tie it up properly so we can keep it on him and keep it safe.
Right.
So while this is going on, he's talking to this lady, and he pays for another bourbon and soda, which is like $2. And
that's nice of him.
He pays a $20 bill, and for the second time, tells her to keep the change. So he's not obviously short of some cash, is he? Let's be honest. He's giving away a $20 bill in the 1970s. He's for a $2 item. He can't be short of cash, basically. So, yeah.
You mean? Oh, sorry, I got confused. You mean he paid with a $20 bill? I thought you said he paid off a $20 bill that he had.
No.
But he gave her $20 for a $2 drink.
Yeah, twice. So he ended up giving her $40. So yeah, $36. Well, obviously with the money coming back, whatever. He literally said, "Have it. I don't want the change. Crack on."
Fair play.
And while he was talking to the stewardess, they noted that he was. This is where it's fucking mind-boggling for me because, he seems very smart. He's got money. I mean, $20 bill for for a $2 drink is weird. And when they're talking about this thing going on, they ask him, "Do you have?" So a conversation comes up about, "Do you have an issue with the airline?" And he says, "No, it's not the airline I have an issue with." And that stuck. That sentence stuck.
Right.
And there's mixed accounts. Some say he was American, some say he was Latino, some say he was Canadian, but they all say he has an accent, but they can't distinguish what it is. Not properly, because they're all saying, from what I've researched, they've all been saying different things. But he mentions, I'm gonna pronounce this wrong now. Minneapolis, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
That's good. Look at that.
Yeah,
Like
nice.
a little country boy got a
You can read.
got a state right. Great. So he mentions Minneapolis, but he mentions it as a country, not as a state of America, right? So they're all like dumbfounded by that and thinking, well, no, that's actually not a country. It's in America. Like, you can get a plane if you want another ride. So he mentions little things like this where he sort of puts people like thinking that he's a bit dumber than what he probably is.
Right.
Because he doesn't seem... I mean, if you're getting a bomb on a plane, you're not stupid, are you?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, he's gotten this far where he's gotten a bomb, whether he's built it himself or not. Mm-hmm. He's successfully negotiated 200 grand in cash and parachutes, so he can't be stupid.
Yeah. It's and this is what I'm going to get to about why they only got the eyewitness accounts of the stewardesses, because there was 36 passengers on board of the plane.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, he exchanged them.
And they only got the stewardesses accounts of this.
From what I gather, yes. Because I don't know why. So he exchanges the passengers for money and parachutes, right? So he's let them off. Really smart man again. I don't think he's stupid. He to sort of, in case there was like snipers or anybody trying to infiltrate the plane, he stands in the back of a plane where it's all shaded out so they can't see him. So when they hand the money over, they don't know who's actually taking the money. Is it Cooper? Is it a stewardess? We don't know who actually gave him the money and if they gave it to him directly, because he was in that sort of moment of thinking, well, if I go out the window and they see me, they got an eyewitness account from a from an official point of view, and they could shoot me and disarm me before I got a chance to take off. So he gets the cash, he gets the parachutes, and off they go again. And he orders the captain to set a course for Mexico City. Now, by doing this, this is going back, I believe, where there wasn't autopilot, so you have to do it by hand. Well, there was autopilot, but the way he wanted them to fly was it had to be the slowest it could be without stalling the plane. It had to be only... It couldn't go above 10,000 feet.
Okay, so he had the plan to jump out then.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Basically, yeah. He already sort of made that clear that he was going to do this. Yeah. Okay. But it was very odd, the things that he was coming out with. I think even the captain said, "Well, by doing that, and the rudders had to be, the wings had to be at 15 degrees. It couldn't be any more than that." So the captain basically says, "Well, we can do it, but you're not going to get to Mexico City. We're going to have to refuel again." Especially going that slow, and technically that low to the ground is not great, obviously. So he warns him and says, "Well, we're not going to get to Mexico City on this refuel. We've got to get fueled again." So, but by this point, he isn't going to stay. Obviously, he's going to jump.
Yeah. So he's setting the course. He's not actually wanting to go there.
Yeah, absolutely. And so it goes on. And this is back in the way that when they were going in the plane and they were going over this area, this is back where they had no GPS system to show where they have flown recently. So when he does jump, there's no area of ground that they can say we can search here, there, and everywhere, because there isn't any. Plus, it's November. It's on a rainy night, and it's going to be freezing at that time of year. A bit of a plane,
even about 10,000 feet in the air as well. Even if they could pinpoint at what point he may have exited the plane, that search radius would be huge.
Yeah, it would. It'd be massive. Damn. And you're looking for one man with a supposedly what I would call probably a fake bomb. It's not it's not been let out that it was fake, but it just seemed very cartoonish.
Yeah.
And somewhere between Seattle and Reno, a little after 8 p.m., so it's obviously nighttime, it would be pitch black. He jumps out. Before he jumps out, I'll just backtrack a little bit. He goes to the captain and says, "I want the ramp to go down." First of all, he orders the stewardess to do it. And she says to him, "Well, for safety reasons, can I get a bit of rope and things from the other parachute that you broke up, so I could tie myself around a chair, so I don't, get sucked out the plane?" Because her thought is, I'm gonna die because the air and stuff. So Cooper ends up saying, "No, go back to the cockpit, and basically just go back to the cockpit and go with the captain." And the stewardess says, "Are you going to, can you take the bomb with you? Because we don't want it on the plane, obviously." Right? Yeah. So DB Cooper basically turns around and says, "I will either disarm the bomb or I'll take it with me. You're not going to know."
Okay.
So, so the waitress, the stewardess goes into the captain's quarters. It's only at this point, it's only literally some of the crew left. The passengers are all gone. So it's just the workers of the airline. Before he jumps, he takes off his clipped tie, and he just leaves it behind. Why? I don't know, but he leaves it behind. The cabin crew and the captain get a notification on the dashboard saying that the ramp to the plane has been opened, and he basically has another couple of cigarettes and he jumps.
Weird.
Yeah, and this is apparently, from what the records say, at this time of year and that high in the air, it would have been, again, I'm not very good at doing this from calculations, but it will be 69 degrees minus. So minus 0. So it'd be freezing. And it's raining. Yeah. And bear in mind, this guy is not wearing, significant clothing. He's just wearing a suit and a pair of loafers. Yeah. And at this point, he's put on a pair of sunglasses. Why? I don't know. But
oh my god.
Yeah, very, very James Bond-esque. So he jumps out. And that's basically all that happens. There's no there's obviously a search party going on, but there's no one there. The stewardess, once they go out and realise that it's been a couple of minutes since the ramp's open, they go out and he's not there. The bomb's not there. Cigarette butts are on the floor of the cabin, of the walkway. There's his tie that's left there. There's nothing else. Everything else is gone.
So weird.
So he's basically gone off with 200 grand.
Yeah.
And even to this day, there's so many people. I mean, there must have been about 4 or 5 families or families that came forward and said, "Oh yeah, my uncle was DB Cooper," because that
everyone
night,
and their mum will be saying that, like,
yeah, it's like there's so many people who have come forward, and the one that stroked me was, it wasn't long ago when I thought they solved the case of DB Cooper, but they haven't.
Okay.
Because you look at DB Cooper solved and they haven't got anything. Nothing concrete anyway. And let's be honest, the guy who was DB Cooper is going to be long way from fucking death now. He would have been in his 90s at this point if he was in his mid 40s at the time of this doing it. So he's probably long gone by now. So he goes, he's off. They don't catch him. They've lost $200,000. And as time goes on, a boy was at, I think it was a beach with his family, and his mum and dad was arguing. He didn't want to be there, so he just starts, as any kid does when they're bored, he just starts playing with his stick in the sand. And he comes across, I think it's $6,000 or $7,000 that have been badly damaged. Like, they're all decomposed. They're really bad. I got a picture of it on screen here on my one, just for reference. And they ring up the police and say, "Well, we found this money," and it was a match for the serial numbers of the money that DB Cooper had stole.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
How long after this was? How long after?
So the money was recovered. I mean, bear in mind this happened in 1971. The money was discovered by this lad in 1980. So 9 years after this happened.
Oh shit! Okay.
Yeah, and there's no. they did their investigation. There was no signs that it had been stashed. There was no signs that it had been buried. So basically, he just threw it. He must have just thrown it, or it must have got lost somewhere. It's just really weird.
Was it a stack of thousands of dollars, or was it like scattered?
It was in
different
this it was in the pouch apparently.
Oh,
But I mean, considering that this guy took off his 200 grand, why has 6 to 7 grand gone out of that 200,000?
Yeah,
You know, it's a funny
maybe
thing.
that's might be that. Well, we can get into theories in a second, but my theory would be that maybe he spent the money because he could have asked for any amount of money he wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Why 200 grand? It feels like if you've said you've got a bomb and you've hijacked a plane, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why so little? I'd be asking for millions. I'd be like, I want at least $1 million minimum. So why 200 grand? I got a feeling he already knew what he wanted to buy with that money. He bought it and threw the rest away because he didn't care.
Yeah,
didn't care about the money because he was spending $20 on $2 drinks. He didn't give a shit about money.
Yeah, no, of course he
didn't. No fucking way he cares about money.
No, he couldn't have done. I mean, you know, chucking a $20 bill at old lady and saying, "I'll keep the change." Which on the second time, by the way, might I add, she actually refused because she didn't want the authorities to think that she was in on it. So by company policy, apparently, is when that happens, you're not to take any money from anybody. Apparently, that's from what I researched earlier on today.
Yeah, fair.
So yeah, he basically he's got away with it, right? It's one of those things that I love to research about this case because it never goes away. So
yeah, like he's immortalized now.
Yeah, he is. And the funny thing is when I said earlier about his name being wrong, there was a journalist who had a guy in the bloody police system who knows everybody, you know, as it is, and this guy is the first person to tell this journalist that there's a man by the name of Daniel Boyle Cooper. So the journalist straight away, boom, you know, hoist of the skies, boom, DB Cooper is to blame. The guy who actually is in the plane buys a ticket and he gives the name of Dan Cooper, not Daniel or DB. It's just Dan Cooper. Now, what's really odd about this is it's the same thing in England. When you fly in England or United Kingdom, if you fly from, say, Scotland to London, you haven't got to hand over any passport because you're in the UK.
Yeah, it's the same country.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with America. So you haven't even got to get out. You haven't even got to give any ID. It's just a case of, well, my name is so and so. But what strikes me as odd about this is, why did he call himself Dan? Why not Daniel?
Yeah, it seems oddly specific. And this is the thing about like him not being stupid and him referring to Minneapolis as a country instead of a state, right? Because he's clearly meticulously planned this out. He's asked for a very specific amount of money, 200 grand, when he could have asked for any amount of money in the world. He didn't care about paying $20 for $2 drinks.
Yep.
He's asked for he's asked for specific like instructions for how to fly the plane, which is odd. Like if you were going to jump out, the only real thing you would care about is how low you were flying.
Yeah.
Because quicker to get to the ground. But and he's gone in saying, "Oh, Dan Cooper, not Daniel," or like any other name. It's just very specifically abbreviated. And the one thing I wanted to sort of like pick up is it immediately like clicked in my brain when they offered him military parachutes, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if it says anywhere in the research you've been doing, but I reckon the only reason they did that is because once he landed, it would be easily identifiable that there was a military passport in the middle of civilian territory, so they could easily track him, which is why he turned it down, because he knew that.
Maybe.
Because if he had a military parachute and he landed, that military parachute is sticking out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, of course it is.
There's no way anyone else would be able to get that.
Yeah.
So I reckon he turned it down, knowing for a fact why they were offering it to him, so they could track him easier.
Yeah. It's it's crazy. I mean, there's so many. Well, there was, after all this stuff happened, they interviewed over 1,000 people. It was mad.
Wow.
To try and find out what was going on. Now, this is where it really, really hurts my head, right? So you've got the clip-on tie, and you've got these cigarette butts.
That and stuff like that is like, it's freaking my brain out, because I'm like, why is he doing all these very specific actions?
Yeah, but what I'm really, really angry about. I mean, of course, we don't know what's going to happen from 10 to 20 years from now, right? Like, the amount of stuff now to get DNA is insane. They can find someone from a fingerprint. It's mad.
Yeah.
But back in the day, they had evidence that would have given DNA. They got these cigarette butts that he had smoked and threw them in the bin.
No way.
Yeah, literally, because they had no way of finding DNA that powerful back in that time. They kept the tie, but they literally had these cigarette butts that were on his hands, was in his mouth. You know, they would have found DNA somewhere if it stayed that long, if it didn't perish at some point. But they've got little traces of metals and things on this tie, which leads people to think that was he a Boeing employee for the airport?
Yeah, like he was like bagpacker or something.
Yeah, was he anything? Was he an engineer on working on the metals? We just don't know. But and this is the thing, they had the stuff there that they could have just kept in a lockbox or just said, don't touch, wait until we've got evidence, and they threw it. And they're never going to know who this gentleman was. It's one of these cases that, I mean, there's so many suspects that have said, oh, I was D.B. Cooper, and I've done this, and I've done that. And there's too many to go into, because this episode will go all from hours to being just mine. And I don't want that to happen. Like, if people want to research this D.B. Cooper case, you can find all the suspects on Wikipedia. Like, it's all on there. Or you can watch BuzzFeed's video on YouTube, because that's great. But they don't go into all the suspects, but there's so many. But one that really strikes me is a person called Barbara Dayton. And they was a recreational pilot for University of Washington. Yeah, but this is what's really odd. It's not odd. It's normal. It's normal to us now in this society. But Barbara Dayton was born Robert Dayton at birth, and I believe, or it says, that they were one of the first people to undergo gender reassignment surgery and become a woman. Nice. So this is all from Barbara, by the way. They're literally saying that she staged the hijacking, and she said she came out of all this 2 years after it actually happened. And
so she's come forward and said that she's the one that did this.
Yeah. And what she said she did is to really, this is, I mean, a brilliant crime if you're going to do it, but to get away with it, she dressed up as a man and literally just fooled everyone, took all this money, lived a very happy life. She's now who she wants to be, and brilliant. Here's who she wants to be. And the funny thing is, they was literally going with this story until they found out that they could still get prosecuted for it and said it wasn't them. like literally, that's what happened.
What a fucking idiot.
Yeah, literally.
That's it. It's wild that she came forward and was like, yeah, no, I did it. It's like, so why would you even... Right. First of all, I'm just going to say now, I don't believe it was her.
No, I don't.
But, like, even if it was, why would you go to the effort of meticulously planning this hijack only for you to come along 2 years later and be like, by the way, it was me. Haha, lol. Like, why would you do that? What the fuck?
Yeah, I know. And there's two more suspects I'll go over before we go into the whole who do we think we did it. I said, there's so many people to think.
Because there's one I want you to talk about, because you mentioned an organization, and that's the one I'm really interested in hearing about.
That's my take on who I believe done it.
Oh, okay, right, fair enough, right.
So the other two people. So the first one is a guy called Jack Kofout. I don't know to pronounce that properly. His name was Bryant Jack Kofout, but he went by Jack. So they was a con man, ex-convict, and basically turned around and claimed he was D.B. Cooper in 1972. So a year, or not even a year after it happened. But he went down this whole route of being, oh, I'm DB Cooper and I know exactly everything that happened because I was there, damn it, and I'm going to sell my story to Hollywood for a really good sum of money. Again, this is less than a year after it happened. You're going to get prosecuted if you're saying this shit, right?
Yeah.
So he tries so hard to give his story to Hollywood, and they're all turning it down. Even 60 Minute News turns it down, right? The FBI who were involved in this case by the time, and even the CIA are involved in it as well. They're all like co-founded it and making,
CIA.
Sorry, the CIA. They're all thank you. They're all like working together to find Dan Cooper. They turn around and say your story's bollocks. It's not what happened. And he's like, yeah, it is. He's like, no, it isn't, because you're missing out. You're missing details out that we have not given to the public. So if he was there, he would have known the things that were given to say, oh, I did it because I know exactly what happened. Yeah. But they're missing key links, right? So they just bat him off and say, stop being an idiot, fuck off, leave it alone. So he died shortly after in 1975, apparently. He just no matter how many times they said it wasn't true, he kept peddling that story, saying it did happen, I was there, and but he wasn't. I mean, it gets to a point in life where you have to, put on this persona and act like you're this guy and pretend you're this guy to have some sort of notoriety that you're this great guy who stole 200 grand. Why would you do that? It's absolutely ridiculous.
People don't really have anything else going for their lives, especially back then. They were like, I'm looking for my 5 minutes of fame so badly.
Yeah.
And obviously because the case was national news.
Yeah.
Fucking idiots like that were like, oh, if I cash in on this, I might get some money from like Hollywood deals. It's like, no. This is literally a federal offense.
Of course it is.
This man committed multiple crimes, and you think if you admit to being this man, you are not going to get arrested on the spot. What the fuck are you talking about?
Not to mention that they get headshots and mugshots of all these guys, right? And they're taking these pictures to the stewardesses who were there at the time. And all but one person looks not exactly like DB Cooper, but looks like him enough. But they gave this person a photo 40 years after it happened, so their memory's going to be a bit jogged in it.
Yeah, just
so
a tad.
It wasn't him, by the way. It was somebody else. I'm just trying to find out who he was. But there's a picture about this person. So anyway, the second person who had their 15 minutes of fame from there,
and I'm pretty sure everyone's even. Well, I suppose if audiences aren't aware of who DB Cooper is, you might have seen the drawing. Of DB Cooper. That was basically all over news channels across America and even like across the internet now.
Yeah,
it's like a really simple drawing of a man in a suit with glasses, and he's got a weird, funny head.
Yeah, basically, he just looks generic. Just looks like a businessman. Like there's no features about him. Like there's not a massive wart on his nose. There's nothing that can show that he stands out. So the final person I'm going to talk about, because again, this is just you can't make it up. So there's a man called Lynn Doyle Cooper. Also, he got a last name Cooper.
Right.
A leather worker and Korean War veteran. Was proposed as a suspect in July 2011 by his niece Marla Cooper, and again, I take this as a grain of salt, because at this point she's basically going over this thing that happened when she was 8 years old, right?
Good Lord.
So she recalled that her uncle and his brother, so her two uncles, were doing something very mischievous, and it was involving the use of expensive walkie-talkies at her grandmother's house in Oregon, right?
Okay.
So they're basically out like, yeah, we're going to go and hunt turkeys for Thanksgiving. Woo!
Yeah.
And then later on that night, he comes home all blooded, saying he was hit by a car.
Right.
So because of that, she's basically saying, that's my uncle, he's DB Cooper.
So instead of being like, are you okay? She's like, you've committed a federal crime.
Yeah. Like,
you have to have committed this crime.
Yeah, now, like, looking at it, she's looking back at, oh my god, my uncle was DB Cooper. Oh my god, he just took 200 grand. I don't think that's how it works, love. Like, I find it really, really weird and odd that, yeah, and the thing is, she gave the FBI his guitar strap that he used to play guitar, apparently, and there was no fingerprints that led to anything to do with DB Cooper.
Yeah.
It didn't match
Evidently
anything from the hijacker's tie.
Yeah.
Nothing. Now, the one thing that is funny before I go on to who I believe done it and who or what done it, should I say, is there is a comic book called Dan Cooper, and in one of his comic books, he hijacks a plane and jumps out of it.
When was the comic book written?
It was before this happened.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So they're believing. I mean, the name is weird. I mean, it was written in French, I believe.
Okay.
For what I can remember, it was written in. It was a French comic book.
Okay.
And they are sort of putting two and two together now. That did this guy have a plan of doing it from a fucking comic book? Like, was that a thing? Maybe. It could have been, but yeah, it's a comic book series. There's quite a few books about it apparently, and they all it's sort of about this guy who's, again, James Bond-esque. And there's it's literally a comic book of this guy called Dan Cooper who's literally jumping out of a plane from the back.
That's so
of the
weird.
Plane. It's
That's like that book that I can't remember. Oh God, I can't remember the name of it. I'm gonna have to Google this. There was a book written years before the Titanic sank that spoke about a very famous
unsinkable ship, wasn't it?
Unsinkable ship that sank due to an iceberg hitting it.
Yeah.
Hang on, let me get this up. Titanic. Yeah, carry on with what was it called? Futility? No, that's just the book about the Titanic. Yeah, carry on with what you were going to say.
Yeah. So he's got this comic book. The only person who had any sort of motive to do this was, there's a gentleman, and you have to forgive me, there's so many people, I've forgotten his name, but this gentleman, when I said about that this person had what's it called?
Sorry to interrupt. The book's called Futility.
Okay.
And it's also known as the Wreck of the Titan.
Wreck of the Titan.
It's like really weird coincidences like that, and it was written about 10 or so years before the Wreck of the Titanic.
Wow.
Yeah, really fucking weird. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
Yeah, so there's another gentleman. I said earlier about, the stewardess goes, well, do you have anything against the airline? And he's like, it's not the airline I've got an issue with. And it's meant to sort of construe that he had an issue with the FBI because years later something happened with this guy's wife, and nothing was done about it or something. And he was so they're sort of it's putting two and two together, but it doesn't make anything because there's no evidence of a guy that's done this. It's just a drawing of a man, and says his name is DB Cooper. It's not. His name is Dan Cooper on his flight ticket. It says just Dan Cooper. So the whole DB thing was misconstrued by a journalist who wanted to get the first story out there for his own sake.
It usually is though. It's like the Zodiac Killer. The Zodiac Killer wasn't called the Zodiac Killer. He was called that because a journalist called him the Zodiac Killer. And it's a lot of that, especially like if it's mystery stuff. If it sounds good, journalists will print it.
Oh yeah,
because
of course
people
will
read it.
Yeah.
So that's probably why they were just like, it sounds better if it's DB Cooper instead of just Dan Cooper, because Dan Cooper sounds too average.
Yeah. The only guy that, for me, sounds any sort of where near resembles Dan Cooper is this guy called Richard McCoy Jr. He was an Army vet. He served 2 tours in Vietnam. He was a demolition expert, and then he went to do the Green Berets as a helicopter pilot. So he was quite, very well known with this sort of stuff. This guy did a copycat hijack of DB. He boarded the same sort of plane, a Boeing 727. He ended up demanding 4 parachutes and 500 grand.
Okay. How long after DB Cooper was this?
It was not even a year. It was
Holy
months
shit.
after. It was on April 7th, 1972.
Wow.
So yeah. he gets all his stuff again, blah 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 blah. He bails out over Provo, Utah, leaving a handwritten hijacking instructions and his fingerprints on a magazine he'd been reading. He was arrested a couple of days later with the cash and his possessions and everything in between. And yeah, he doesn't say he's Dan Cooper though, but he's done things that the original Dan Cooper has done, right? Again, could be copycat, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so things go on. After some things happen, years have gone by, whatever. He gets into a shootout with police. And when the detective, his FBI agent, when the FBI agent shot and killed Richard McCoy Jr., he ended up saying, when I shot Richard McCoy Jr., I shot DB Cooper at the same time. So they really think he done it.
Okay.
But there's no evidence supports that he was Dan Cooper because there is no evidence for he left behind at the Dan Cooper case. Now, ending of this case for me.
Okay.
I
just want to make a point quickly before you wrap it up on that bit.
Yeah.
If they got his fingerprints, because obviously it was less than a year after the copycat did, right? If they got his fingerprints, then clearly he couldn't have been Dan Cooper, because the reason they would have had his fingerprints on file is because he was in the army.
Yeah.
And so they couldn't find any fingerprints or any relation to any other fingerprints from the tie or any of the other bits and bobs they found on the plane from Dan Cooper. Yeah. So they couldn't have been the same person anyway, because otherwise the fingerprints would have matched.
Yeah, and
they would have already had the fingerprints on file.
Yeah, of course, because you're in the military. But not just that, but the day that this happened with the original Dan Cooper, McCoy was at Las Vegas with his family having Thanksgiving dinner.
Oh.
So it wasn't him, but he just thought, shit, if DB Cooper can do it, I could do it as well. But the FBI, CIA, whatever, they wanted to pinpoint someone. Now,
they needed someone,
Yeah. Now, for me, I'm not going to get into all conspiracy theory stuff because that's for next week's episode. I'm not doing this case ever again. Okay, I've been having sleepless nights thinking about this and this goddamn case. So, who do I think done it? Well, if you look at the whole case, right? I mean, you got two stewardesses. Obviously the captain don't see.
I'm not gonna lie, Cooper. It really sounds like you're just about to say it's aliens. No. The way you're talking, it's about to be like, if you look at the whole case, it's probably aliens.
I'm not going to do a History Channel and say everything's got to do with aliens. Okay, ancient aliens who live on the moon. They do live on the moon, but yeah, there's not ancient aliens.
They can live on the moon.
So
anyway, carry on.
If you look at the whole thing, so you've got these two stewardesses who give literally a identical report of what happened, an identical report on how the man looked and how he sounded, everything in between, right? So you've got them. I can't find anything about what the passengers thought about him. I don't know whether they were questioned or not. I don't know, but you just get whatever comes up is doing these stewardesses, right? So
you think that they would be questioned though, because the passengers would have been there.
Yeah, and whether they was behind or in front of him, there would have been someone there, surely.
Yeah.
Very, very odd. So they give this eyewitness account on what it sounds like, everything in between. And when it comes down to it, for me, you were given, at some point, this guy really didn't care about being caught. Because why would you drop your tie and leave it in the plane? Why would you leave any evidence you were ever there? Going back to and this is something that no one's actually picked up on until now that I thought about it, you handed a guy on 2 occasions a glass that he drank out of. That's evidence. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
So you've done that.
I know, like, DNA evidence was hard to get back then, but like they literally have his saliva.
Yeah, not just that, but what about the $20 bills that this guy was giving out to people? Right? Like that's got, unless he's wearing gloves, that's got to have some sort of DNA on it. Yeah. So, and not just that, the cigarette butts. Apparently, he smoked 8 cigarettes in half an hour just on the first flight, and he smoked more as it was going on. I mean, you're thinking, "Fuck, am I gonna get away with this?" 70s. But yeah, you know, when smoking was apparently brilliant for you and it did everything right for you. So there's all this stuff, and to me, I just honestly think it was one great big insurance scam. Because after it
From
was
the
given
airline?
away, yeah, because at the end of it, the airline was the people apparently who gave him the 200K cash. They worked it out with the FBI to get it sorted. Every airline is going to have an
Ah.
insurance at some point because they're going to have to, aren't they? In case a plane
Yeah.
blows up or whatever, they're going to have to have something there to ensure that they're going to get money back in case, especially if it's got people on board that are civilians, right?
Mm.
So I honestly think you've got all this evidence. You threw some of it in the bin. Yeah, different times. Maybe they thought we don't need it, but there's been cases where they've kept other things longer than this time period.
Yeah.
So why?
Wait, sorry. Who threw the cigarette butts in the bin?
It was a case. I was researched it on a podcast last night. It was when they were doing when they got everything, so the tie, the cigarette, anything they could find as evidence. They literally said there's nothing you could do with this, so we might as well just chuck it.
So the FBI threw it away.
Yeah.
Fucking idiots, man.
So, and this is the FBI. Like, come on.
I mean, they're not exactly the most intelligent
No.
task force. Only when they need, they really want to be. But yeah, anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Carry on.
Yeah. So, like I said, there's so many suspects you could. And the thing is, once you read into one suspect, you start thinking, "Shit, this could be the man," and then you realize it can't be because there's different things going on or where the guy was, and the FBI think there's a guy called Robert Rackstraw who they honestly thought did it, but they can't have. There's no direct evidence of his involvement. They couldn't find anything. So again, they couldn't think anything.
Saying it wasn't just one person. It was
no. I honestly
think
it was. Yeah, I think it was a complete clusterfuck of just a government that was just trying to do so, or whether it was an airline that wanted to think, well, we could make money off this if someone got away with. Because let's think about it. He doesn't injure anybody. He's very pleasant. He gives the woman a $20 tip, basically, or an $18 tip rather, because he doesn't want to change. There's all these things that come into it. Apparently, he was a very, very nice and polite man. Didn't swear, didn't do anything, didn't cause any problems. He was just there saying, "I got a bomb. Here's a note. Oh, you better read it because it's gonna go off if you don't read it." And he leaves, and he doesn't hurt anybody. Doesn't physically get involved in anybody. It's just a case of I want 4 parachutes. I want 200K cash and $20 bills, and I'm gonna leave now. Over New Mexico, on the way to New Mexico. Sorry.
What if it was the captain, or like the employees of that specific flight, the stewardesses and the pilots? What if they were all in on it?
They
were just like, let's make a guy to say this is a guy called DB Cooper, blah blah blah. Just take a random guy's ticket, because they could have made a ticket that said Dan Cooper, because no one ever saw this man's face apart from the stewardesses, right?
Well, the thing is, he paid for the ticket. He paid with a $20 bill. And he had an actual ticket in his name of Dan Cooper.
They work for an airline. They could have easily forged that.
They could
have given money themselves and been like, oh, buy a ticket under the guise of Dan Cooper.
Yeah, they could.
Because it would have been the stewardesses who took that ticket, so they could have already had the ticket, given it to the FBI for evidence, quote unquote. Because my thinking is the only people that saw this man are the stewardesses. That is it.
Well, it was the stewardesses.
Nobody else saw this man's face,
and it was the receptionist who gave him the ticket that you paid for.
Okay, so that might implicate another person. But
I
reckon it was them,
I don't see it. It could be, but it's weird because even the woman behind the desk, I think it was a woman or gentleman, one of them, they literally said that they didn't ask for any ID because you don't need to.
But the thing is, I suppose this is pre 9/11, so
yeah, exactly.
Boarding a plane would probably be a little bit more lenient.
It literally says that, like, getting a plane back then, there was so little security that it was just a case of get your stuff and go. Like the sake of the whole case, that they didn't even check his suitcase, right? It was just walk on, have a good flight, mate.
It's wild.
It's really odd crazy. Because these are things that nowadays you get flagged up on. You'll be going to prison, or being deported.
You wouldn't even get on the plane.
No,
like if you couldn't provide proper evidence of your actual name, you wouldn't be able to even step foot on the plane. Let alone get to the point where you can be like, oh yeah, I've got a bomb.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, so I honestly do. I think from the things that happened, I mean, they never found a parachute, they never found a body. Again, I say that very loosely because they don't exactly know the exact area that he jumped because there was no tracking. But the fact that he flew over a certain area and he jumped out, that would be a widespread area. Now the parachute he used was a civilian, so it couldn't be steered, so he could just be flying, right, going down, thinking he's this action hero Dan Cooper from the comic book from France, and he gets spiked by a pine tree. Like, it could be that simple. Like, we just don't know. I just find it's just one of those cases, man, that I'm in bed at night thinking, oh, I got a lead, and I'm like, no, I haven't. Of course I haven't.
The thing is, smarter men than us have tried to figure this case out and failed. So I highly doubt we
the FBI have failed. Like,
well, it wouldn't be the first time.
No, mad.
Yeah, that's crazy. The one thing that gets it for me is that, like, I'm thinking, oh, did this actually happen? It's like, yeah, but they found about $6,000 that related back to the bills that
serial
he was
numbers,
given,
yeah,
which is nuts. And I can't even begin to think what the sort of like what it could be.
Yeah, it's just weird.
That is really weird.
And the thing is, there's so many stories. I love it. I absolutely love the case. There are so many people who have just speculated that this guy knew where he was going. I mean, if he knew exactly where he was going, he's a very smart man. If this ever did get pulled off and he's still alive, well, still was living up until recently, whatever. But there's a theory that this gentleman jumped at the plane and he literally lived in the wilderness. And that was based on the film Without a Paddle. So the film was based on DB Cooper, where these guys who their friend dies I think he dies in a car crash or something. They want to go on one last adventure because they're like going through like a midlife crisis thing, and they've all got decent jobs, or one's like a really cool surfer dude, and they don't know what's going on in life. So they go on this whole thing about finding DB's treasure, and in the film, it's allegedly DB Cooper is still alive. Yeah, I mean, they should have seen it years ago since it's been out. But the alleged DB Cooper is played by Burt Reynolds, and when they meet him, he's just this cool little country guy who's got a shotgun and whatever, and he hates people being on his land. But they end up finding DB Cooper's body with all his money, and in the film, he burns all the money just so he could have a few more moments of life to keep warm. That's in the film. And then at the end, when things happen, Burt Reynolds' character hands them a bag of cash and winks at them, and it's like, basically, like, yeah, I'm DB Cooper, but I'm not going to tell you I'm DB Cooper. And he walks away. And that's a great film. If you haven't seen it, Without a Paddle, go and see it. It's a great film.
Yeah, I need to see that.
But yeah, like, this is the thing. We don't know. It's been years.
And the thing is, spending that money would, even in the 70s, spending the money that the FBI gave you would be near impossible, because they definitely had some sort of tracking on that money, like whether it was like specific identifiers on the money or
you can
like
imagine
marks
it
that they made.
Yeah,
like they didn't just hand them $200,000 in cash. There's no way the FBI can be stupid sometimes.
But this is the thing, though, right? If the only thing that we know they had is that the case of the serial numbers. That's all we know. So if you were to jump out of a plane and go to a bank, I'm sure every bank in all of America was given a red flag about serial numbers.
Yeah, like the moment those serial numbers come through, flag them up.
Yeah, but this is what revolves me back
spending it
round.
Would have just been near impossible.
It would, but this is where it revolves back round in this great big circle of bullshit. Because if it was real and they did give him it is real money. Why did they do that? Like, you're giving a guy $200,000 in cash. You could have given him a load of forged bills. Do you know what I mean? It could have been something so simple that they could have done without actually losing $200,000.
Yeah.
Just weird.
Yeah, that is weird, isn't it?
Yeah. So I honestly think whoever this guy was, if he did end up, if he was working for the FBI, because the thing is, they can make anyone disappear, right? Like, it's not hard. They can change someone's identity, and this whole Dan Cooper, it may not even be his real bloody name. It probably isn't his real name.
It's definitely not his real name. There's no way Dan Cooper was his actual name. there's no way he would have went to, if he's real. The more I hear about this, the more I'm in the camp of, is he actually real? But if he actually like did do all of this and he's a real dude, there's no fucking way he gave his real name. Not a chance.
No.
I reckon he chose the name Dan Cooper on purpose.
Yeah, because of the comic book. It's so
100%.
weird how it all relates to something. And like I said, I thank God I've talked about this case, because it's gone in my head now. Like, it's done. I'm not going to spend
case now for 47 minutes.
Yeah, I know. We're going to go into we've gone longer than that, because I've gone. It's come up to an hour on the timestamp.
Yeah, we spoke for a bit at the start, but I started the timer just after you started talking about it.
Oh, okay.
I started a timer on my phone just to keep track of stuff.
That
doesn't really matter. We're a podcast. We can go how long however long we want. But if people don't listen to us, then fuck you. You're missing out on loads of shit. If you've gotten this far, by the way, thank you. Thank you for getting this far. For those of you who haven't gotten this far, it's not hard. Just put it on in the background. Just stick some headphones on, clean the house,
or do what my friends have done
for a couple hours.
Like, my friends who've listened to the podcast from start to finish, I've played like Euro Truck and played like role playing games, and I've just put it on while they've been doing like meaningless tasks on games that they have something on the background to listen to. And thank you for that, by the way. I love the fact that you've listened to it and you love the story.
Thank you for those who have come in and listened to us properly. Like, the average view time on this, I know we're a new channel and I know we're a new podcast, and I get people want to support us without actually listening to 2 hours of our bullshit, right? But I promise you, we're fucking funny, all right? So
funny looking.
For those of you who spent 5 minutes on this podcast and turned it off, thank you for even checking out on us, right? Thank you very much. However, we're really fucking funny, so stick around, please. No, but seriously, the people who have watched us,
thank you,
and support the channel, thank you very much. And the people that subscribe to us, thank you very much.
Yeah, 7 honestly, in the first video.
I know most of them we already know, but yeah, it's a start.
Yeah, it's a start.
So yeah, honestly, thank you so much. And that fucking case there, really interesting. If you don't stick around for that, I don't know. I can't help you. Sorry.
Wait until you start talking about aliens who live on the moon. You're never gonna forgive that one.
That's gonna go on for like 3 hours.
Yeah. That'd just be us arguing. That won't be the case of aliens living on the moon. Well,
I think that's a pretty decent place for me to turn around and say, if you have gotten this far and you are enjoying it, then please do like and subscribe to our the video, subscribe to our channel.
And also, may I add to that, if you guys have listened to the podcast and you have sort of like an account or a version of what you think happened, put it in the comments section. We'd love to hear your things about it.
I want to know how many people think it's aliens and how many people think it's genuine.
yeah, just do it. Like, we love having the comments, guys. It's great. I thank you to those who've messaged me directly and said that it's good and that it's a good fun watch to listen. Sorry, to listen to.
Very much appreciate the feedback we've been getting so far. Even though we've only had one episode, so we will grow. And the thing is, we are only fresh, right? We will learn and we'll get a better layout and format and stuff like that. It's a bit of fun. We're just chatting shit. It's what we do. It's what we always do.
Always do. You want to hear our phone calls at 2:00 in the morning? It's weird.
I do want to preface the fact, by the way, DB Cooper stuff. The most I know about the DB Cooper stuff is down to Loki. So in Loki season 1, Loki there's a flashback scene because obviously it's to do with time and stuff like that. So there's like a flashback scene of him in the 70s, and he's basically DB Cooper. He's wearing a suit and he winks at the stewardess, jumps out the plane with a bunch of money in his hand, and the Bifrost picks him up, and he says as a joke, "Oh, I was dared by I lost a bet from Thor, who said that I couldn't do it, so that was my forfeit. Basically, I was dared to hijack a plane and steal a bunch of money."
Really funny.
And the funniest part about it is Tom Hiddleston looks almost exactly like DB Cooper, and that's the funniest part about it.
Again, like it's one of these things, isn't it? That the pop culture and things they're gonna make references to this guy for years to come. Even when we're in our 80s, they're gonna be mentioning him. They'll never know who 100%. It is. If they can't do it now, they never will. Plus, by the time it goes when we're in our 80s, it'll be over 100 years, 200 years ago. It'll be crazy. The stuff that's gonna be coming out, even if it does. I mean, the case was closed in 2016. That's how recently they closed the case. And not just that, right? But if he took off with 200 grand, the FBI, CIA, whoever else is involved in it, they spent a lot more than 200 grand trying to find this guy.
Yeah, 100%. do me a favor. Just you might want to cut this bit. It's up to you.
Okay.
You just talk to the audience for a bit. I need to take off this really fluffy fucking hoodie because I'm roasting in my own skin right now. Hold on a second.
Yeah, go for it. So yeah, while TJ goes and removes his fluffy hoodie, yeah, thank you guys for watching. Sorry, I say watching as if you're like staring at the screen to our logo, G&T. If you've listened to the podcast and you like it, fantastic. We're just literally two friends who are just making this podcast because we thought we talk about this stuff on a very regular basis, so why not make a podcast out of it? And that's what we've done.
Like we have to listen to each other's bullshit. So why don't you have to listen to it? So this is basically what this is born from. Like, we want the world to hear the amount of shit that we talk. So,
and it's a lot. So anyway, the case for us of DB Cooper has now been case closed. I'm done with this
case closed. We solved it.
We solved it. It was the FBI.
We figured it out. It was the FBI, or it was some woman called Barbara, or it was another person, or it was aliens, or he never actually existed. And those are the official answers.
And as far as I'm concerned now, this case has gone out of my mind. I cannot be focusing anymore on this case. So
is there some sort of closure
Cooper,
for you?
It is, yeah. It's like bye bye. Like, you know, I'm never gonna. I mean, I'll always watch things about it, but I'm not gonna go on about it anymore. So DB Cooper, fantastic guy. I think if you got away with it, amazing.
Fantastic guy.
Yeah, I think but you got to be having. If he got away with it,
we don't endorse taking bombs on planes, guys. But
yeah, we
DB Cooper was a good guy.
But he was
fair,
a gentleman criminal. Like, he didn't hurt anybody, you know? I just think it's one of those funny things.
Crime.
Victimless, yeah. I mean, just some money from the government. So, case closed. Right, go it. Your turn. Yeah. What's your case, and let's hear about it.
Yeah. Do crimes, kids, if it's cool.
Don't do crimes. Just hijack a plane, get 200
Don't say that.
grand,
you can't say that. You can't say that on YouTube.
And you know, and just jump out the back of a plane with 200 grand in your back pocket. You know, it's fine.
You can't endorse hijacking planes on YouTube.
I'm not endorsing it. I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying, like, just don't kill people. Just rob a plane and, well, don't even rob a plane. Just hijack it.
If you're going to hijack a plane, be gentlemanly about it.
Yeah, of course. And wear a lovely suit and sunglasses.
Yeah, or tip your waitresses. Always be nice to the staff. And if you're hijacking a plane, then don't hurt anybody. Just calmly say, I'm hijacking this plane, and then, you know, run away with 200 grand in cash of the FBI's money.
Boom.
It's fine.
Yeah.
We're gonna get like raids on our houses now, being like,
I said this to
you
you
endorsing
yesterday.
robbing the FBI.
I said this to you yesterday. If I start having blacked out vehicles with no number plates, you know, start following me to and from work, we're doing something wrong. We're doing something good.
If ever we get fucking followed by like shady people, I'm gonna do what Tom Hardy's depiction of the Krays do in
I'll give him a cup of tea.
Legend, where he just goes up to him with a cup of tea, and he's like, "Do you want a cup of tea?" Hey? Yeah. He just gives him a tea.
Yeah. So yeah, that's my case then. I hope you guys enjoyed that one. So yeah, on to yours. Let's hear yours. I'm really interested about this one.
This is a slightly more morbid one. This isn't a victimless crime. This has many victims.
So we're not going to endorse this one, okay?
No, don't do this. Don't do this one. Do the other one. So. Okay, so this is the case of the Sodder children from West Virginia, and I'll start. It was the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. But there was going to be a house fire.
Wow,
that's not from any article, by the way. That's me.
Of course. Jeez.
Okay, so basically, and. Most fucked up thing about this, well, one of the most fucked up things about this is it was because it was on Christmas Eve that it happened.
Did it actually?
Well, technically, it was Christmas that it happened.
Okay.
Because it was after 12 o'clock. But basically, in 1945, George and Jenny Sodder were upstairs in their house in Fayetteville, West Virginia. I'm pretty sure I'm saying that right. Fayetteville, Fayetteville, yeah.
Could be Fayetteville,
down Route 16.
Fayetteville, yeah, one of those. It's West Virginia, it's fine. You know where it is.
Yeah, it's not down Route 16. That's what they put the billboard up later. But anyway, in Fayetteville, West Virginia, on Christmas Eve, George and Jenny Sodder, the parents of the Sodder family, settled down for a night of just a night in. and they all went to bed. They had 10 children. One was in the army at the time this happened, so he wasn't there. And their 9 children were in the house at the time. They knew their 9 children were in the house at the time. This is what they knew for a fact before they went to bed.
Okay.
At around 1 o'clock in the morning, a fire broke out in the house. George and Jenny, along with 4 of their children, managed to escape, leaving 5 unaccounted for.
Okay.
Once this fire broke out, the entire house was pretty much engulfed in flames. The whole house went up. George and Jenny managed to get their four children out. I don't think it actually says their specific names. But yeah, 4 of them. Oh, it does. Hang on. Yeah, this is again completely improvised.
The power of the internet.
2-year-old Sylvia, 17-year-old Marion, 23-year-old John, and 16-year-old George Jr.
Oh, so they weren't escaped. Young then? They weren't like kids?
No.
Wow, okay.
No. Wow, the youngest being 2 years old.
Yeah.
These are the ones that escaped. So they escaped with their mum and dad, George and Jenny.
Okay.
George and Jenny, whilst outside, they realised that they were 5 kids down. So George, in a panic, went back into the house to try and save them. He broke windows. He cut himself getting in through the window. All he could see was fire and smoke. It was engulfed, completely engulfed.
Yeah.
He realized that the 5 kids that were missing, he must have known where they were. He had to have known where they were. They were upstairs in their bedrooms. They had to have been.
Yeah.
So when he broke into the house and smashed through the windows and cut himself up, he couldn't get upstairs. It was engulfed in flame, completely burning, mid blaze at this point.
Okay.
So he couldn't get upstairs. So he went back out of the house and he tried doing something else. So he was like, right, fuck it, I need to get a ladder to go up to their bedrooms. The ladder, which he always keeps propped up against the house, was missing. And he thought that was odd, but didn't really think about it at the time.
Okay.
So he's like, okay, fuck it, I need to go get my trucks. So he got his two coal trucks that he used for work, that he was using the day before. Right, he'd used them. They were fine. They were driving. He got into the trucks. Both trucks wouldn't work. They refused to start.
Really?
Yeah, I shit you not. They refused to start, and they didn't see. They didn't start at all. So he was needing to find another option. He tried to scoop water from a rain barrel, but it was frozen solid. It being Christmas.
Yeah.
At this point, he's thinking, Jesus Christ, God's forsaken me at this point. Like, fucking hell, all I want to do is save my children, and there's all these obstacles in the way. So he couldn't do anything about it. And so his daughter Marion ran off to the neighbor's house to call the fire department, but no operator would respond.
Wow.
And 911 the operator itself not responding is fucking weird.
That's odd.
Yeah. And I mean, it might have been busy, but still the operator is wild. So no operator responded. So another neighbor who saw the house on fire ran into a pub to try and get them to call the fire department. And again, they called. No response from the operator at all. So it took a neighbor who had to track down the chief of the fire department, whose name Fire Chief F.J. Morris, who basically started Fayetteville's version of a fire alarm, what they called a phone tree, whereby so the chief would phone a firefighter he knew.
Yeah.
That firefighter would then ring another firefighter and another one and another one, until they got a whole team together, got a truck, and made their way to the blaze.
So that's sort of like so this is about the 1940s. So that today in our sort of time then would be that you get a fire reported, and then you get like the
Mhm.
pagers that a fireman would have to say we gotta go now. Sort of that sort
Yeah,
of thing,
pretty
then, isn't
much.
it? Yeah.
Essentially, that's what that would have been. Yeah.
Yeah, but they got to do it all
Um,
manually to get everyone together.
yeah, pretty much. And in 45, it would have taken a while, but
Yeah.
I don't think it would have taken this long. So the blaze started at about 1 in the morning, right?
Yeah.
By all accounts. Despite the fast moving, and by this point, right? And in total, it will explain later, but as a whole, the fire itself took 45 minutes to turn the house to ash, right?
45 minutes.
45 minutes. It was
Sheesh.
burning so hot, and because obviously back then, even now, like houses are just made of wood. That's all they are in America. They're just wood with foundations.
Mm.
And so it didn't take the fire long to spread through and completely engulf the house, turning it to cinders.
Wow.
So by all accounts, it only took 45 minutes for the house to completely be engulfed in flames and almost basically, you know, nothing they could do.
Mm.
So given those timings, fire started at 1 o'clock. All of this is happening really, really fast. About 45 minutes it took for the house to completely be engulfed in flames. By the point there was nothing they could do. The fire department, whilst the neighbors were calling them, the house was still burning, right?
Mm-hmm.
The firefighters that responded to this the call, the fire department itself was only 2.5 miles away. Not far at all. Right?
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
They didn't get there till 8 a.m. in the morning.
Shit.
By which point, that home was gone. It was nothing but ash. The fire had gone, basically. It was nothing but like small embers and little flickers of fire. The house was fucking gone. Nothing but burnt ash at this point.
Damn.
So, yeah, you can imagine how fucking fucked off these parents were at this point.
Yeah.
No operator response. The cars weren't, but the trucks weren't working. The ladder, which always was at the side of the house, isn't there. And just by a fucking act of divine fuck you, the water that the dad tried to pour over some of the fire, not that it would have helped, was fucking frozen. So
Yeah, that's
yeah.
weird.
So by the time the fire department got there, it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. So they did what they could to sort of set out the rest of it.
They did what they could. I'm sorry, there's nothing they can do now, is there? Let's be honest.
No,
Like
exactly.
at that
Yeah.
time, I mean, they're 8 hours too late, 7 hours too late. Sorry,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah, literally.
like, I mean, they have a thing, don't they? Or well, they do nowadays, where when they get a call, is it the first 15 minutes they got to be at a call, literally at the scene, within the first at least the first 15. I think it's the first 15.
Yeah,
it might
that's
even be
the
less than
crucial
that.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any time over that, then it becomes critical.
Yeah.
That's
100%.
mad. But they were literal 7 hours late.
Yeah.
And by
Yeah.
the time that it's not even been an
And
hour, it's all gone
Yeah.
to cinder.
and the worst part about it is the person that initiated this whole like loop of phone calls was the chief of the fire department.
Yeah,
Like
that's
he
weird.
started the loop of phone calls to be like, hey, let's fucking get on this. And it still took them 7 hours to figure out their shit, get a crew together, and go. 7 fucking hours.
So this is on. This is Christmas. It's technically Christmas
this
night,
point,
isn't it?
Yeah, pushing into Christmas. Yeah, Christmas morning technically.
Yeah, sorry,
Christmas Eve
morning,
night,
yeah.
and then pushing into Christmas. So their house burned, and their life was destroyed on Christmas morning. That morning.
So I mean, I'm no expert from that time of era because I was never even thought of back then. But
Yeah.
I'm sure even in today's generation and era that you always have some sort of emergency correspondence working, like, because
Yeah,
it
and the
never
thing
stops,
is-
does it?
Yeah, and the thing is, this is in a place called Fayetteville, West Virginia, right? This is a not back end of nowhere, but it's basically like a nowhere town. It's not an important town. It's not a busy town.
Yeah.
It's just sort of like a towny town. So the fire department should have fucking responded quicker. They absolutely should have.
Yeah.
And purely going off assumptions, how many fucking fires could have there been within
Yeah.
a 10-mile radius of Fayetteville, West Virginia,
But
on Christmas Eve.
what baffles me is the fact that you said they're like it's like 2 miles away from like the fire station's
Yeah.
2 miles ish
2.5
away,
miles.
and like if that's nothing. Like, you can understand if it was like a town over, couldn't you? To a degree. I mean, it's still 7 hours is a long time to wait.
Yeah. It does not. Even in 1945, it didn't take 7 hours for a fire department to gather a crew and drive 2.5 miles.
So, I mean, you're obviously probably going to get to this, but why did it? What started it?
Oh, we'll get to that.
Okay.
So there's multiple accounts of what may have started it. It's never. There's an official answer from the investigators.
Okay.
But you'll get to why I believe that in a minute.
Right.
So by this point, George and Jenny are thinking their kids are dead. Right, their house is ash. Their kids are dead. They're buried in rubble and smoke and ash. However, a very brief search of the grounds that morning, no remains were found. No trace of any human remains were found at all.
Okay.
And it says in the article that I'm reading from the Smithsonian, it was a brief search. So I don't know how thorough it was.
Okay.
But Chief Morris, the fire department chief, he suggested that it was the blaze that caused it, but that was later disputed by George later on down the line. I'll get to that a bit in a second. That disputed that the house wasn't burning long enough for it to be, for it to char away the remains of a human being.
Yeah.
So a state police inspector put it down to faulty wiring. It was an electrical hazard.
Okay.
Electrical fire. That's what they put it down to. And still to this day, by the way, the official response to this was that it was an electrical fire. It was a faulty wiring fire.
Right.
So obviously very, very unhappy with this. They refused the official answer of what went on and what happened. George Sodder covered the basement with 5 feet of dirt, intending to preserve it as a site, like a memorial site for the children. And the coroner issued 5 death certificates before the new year, attributing their deaths to fire or quote fire or suffocation.
Wow. Okay.
Assuming the children had perished inside the house. Neither George or Jenny believed any of what the official reports were saying. Now, a bit of context as well about George Sodder. He was born in Sardinia, Tula, Sardinia, in 1895. Giorgio Suda, or Sodu. I can't pronounce that name. He immigrated to the United States in 1908. Him and his older brother accompanied to Ellis Island. But his brother returned to Italy. But George was very, very outspoken. Like he had like he was a working man. He was like he hauled dirt and he worked in like coal factories and stuff like that. And he was a very outspoken bloke. And he was very critical of his homeland's like political landscape at the time, because obviously in 1945, it would have been. I think it would have been Mussolini, but he was very outspoken of Mussolini.
Yeah.
I can never remember when Mussolini was hanged in Italy. So he was very outspoken, and that does come up later on.
Right. Okay.
And I do have a theory as to what might have happened. But the town is basically described as an Appalachian town with a small but active Italian immigrant community. So it wasn't like a bustling fucking cityscape.
Yeah. Just to go on about the Mussolini, he was hung in 1945.
He was hanged in 1945.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
April 28th. Yeah.
So so Sodder, basically, George Sodder was critical of Mussolini, right up until when he was hanged.
Yeah.
And he always sort of was very outspoken about his views on him. Obviously, being an Italian, the right-wing Italians probably didn't like that. George and Jenny Sodder were always they were always referred to, quote, one of the most respected middle class families around. So they weren't dirt poor.
No.
They weren't they weren't living in poverty. They were living quite not well off, but comfortable.
Mm. Well, you'd have to
And
be
they were
comfortable
always
to have
very
9 kids as
respected.
well, mustn't you? Like, let's be
Yeah,
honest.
well, 10. One of them was
Yeah.
in the army.
Yeah. Oh, they are
Yeah,
10 then.
there's
Yeah.
still a lot of fucking kids, and they had 10 kids between 1923 and 1943. So 20 years they had 10 kids, which is, by the way, wild. I know it was the
Yeah.
40s and early 1900s, but fucking wild.
Television, people. Television.
Yeah. um. So the Sodders planted flowers where the house once stood, and they basically stood decorated as like a memorial space. And then they started basically making their own investigation into what happened because obviously they didn't believe anything of what the officials were saying. So they
Yeah.
decided to start stitching together really shady moments that had happened leading up to the fire.
Okay.
Apparently, according to, I think it was George who was approached by this. Yeah. So it was George who was approached by a bloke who was. So he approached the house. It was a complete stranger. He didn't know him.
Mm-hmm.
Asking if he had any haul work. So, if you needed any furniture hauling out of the house, if you needed any dirt moving or just heavy lifting stuff. George was like, no, it's fine, don't worry about it. And the bloke refused to sort of like take no for an answer, and he started meandering around the house. He saw a fuse box at the side of the house and was basically saying, the quote on here from George, he claims the guy says, "This is going to cause a fire someday."
No
Um,
way.
yeah, which is odd because it's a fucking stranger. He doesn't know this guy.
Yeah.
And the weird thing about it was George had he had the wiring checked by a local power company, and they considered it fine. They were like,
Okay.
"No, it's good. Don't worry about it." And he made sure that it was all good, and it was basically not a brand new fuse box, but it was past its inspection.
Right.
Around the same time, a man tried to sell the family life insurance. Again, a complete stranger going door to door.
This is Christmas
Tried to
Eve,
sell the
right?
family. No. This was leading up to Christmas Eve.
Oh, okay.
This was like the months leading up.
Right. Okay. Got ya.
Hang on, I need to cough. Bear with me. There we are. Yeah, so in the months leading up to Christmas Eve, all this like weird shit started happening to them. The bloke that tried selling them life insurance got really pissed off when George said no. Obviously, if a stranger comes up to your house going, "Hey, you should get life insurance for all your family," you're going to be like, "Get the fuck away from my house." So he became really pissed off, and he said, "Quote, your goddamn house is going up in smoke." And he warned, "Quote, and your children are going to be destroyed. You are going to pay for the dirty remarks you have been making about Mussolini."
Shit. Wow, that's
Yeah,
heavy.
so the far right Italian groups were clearly watching him, and they knew who he was. Um, so, so yeah, it was obviously because Fate, never bloody pronounce it. Fayetteville had a pretty tight knit Italian community. He'd often like engage them in debates and things.
Right.
So obviously there are sects from that community that weren't appreciative of the way he was speaking about the former dictator. Apparently the family noticed shortly before just before Christmas,
Mhm.
just before the night happened, they noticed a man that was parked along Highway 21 intently watching younger kids.
Hmm.
It was one of the Sodder's older children who noticed that. Let's have a look.
This is very, very strange.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird shit that happened. And there's a lot of like odd stuff. Despite all that happening though, I think it's really sweet because on the Christmas morning, they still opened some of their presents. The kids managed to open some of their presents.
Wow.
Oh wait, no. So it was. So sorry, yeah. So it was just before the fire that it happened. The children at about 12:30 in the morning opened some of their presents, and then they all went to bed. The phone rang, and Jenny answered it. And apparently, a female voice asked for a name that she didn't know, and there was laughter in the background and glasses clinking. Obviously, Jenny saying it was the wrong number and then hanging up.
Right.
So that's odd that happened. But what she did notice was that all the lights were on, the curtains were open, and the door wasn't locked. But she attributed this to because Marion was asleep on the sofa. She attributed it to be that she'd just come in and forgot to turn all this stuff off.
Yeah.
So she went up to bed. She turned out the lights, closed the curtains, and locked the door. And she didn't think anything of it. And she fell asleep. And she claims to have heard a loud bang on the roof, and then a rolling noise. And about an hour later, she woke up, and her room was filled with smoke. Now, the loud banging noise will come in later. I personally, I'm not sure about this theory that they had,
Right.
that specific theory. But yeah, so she heard a noise on the roof, a thud, almost as if something was lobbed up there and rolled down.
Yeah.
She obviously 5 children burning alive in a fire and having no remains whatsoever, no bones, no flesh, nothing, no clothes, nothing found, is fucking weird, right?
Yeah, very
There's no way
strange.
that happens. So they hired a private investigator.
Okay,
As you
like you
would.
would. Yeah.
Yeah. So they hired private investigators and they hired various other like professionals and stuff to help them out. And they even conducted their own experiments, by the way. Jenny started burning animal bones and chicken bones and like beef joints and pork chops and stuff like that and all sorts of meat to prove that this couldn't have happened. Every fucking time the fire consumed the meat and left the bones. But
Yeah.
to be fair, in terms of this this context of these experiments, it probably wouldn't have charred the bones anyway because the fire wouldn't have been as hot
I was gonna
as it
say,
would have been.
yeah,
Yeah,
you've got everything burning at once, haven't you? Like there's gonna be absolutely
exactly.
raging in there compared to like a frying pan sort of fire.
Yeah, exactly. So the one thing that was weird about it, and they always like something's not right, is that there was no bones found, and they were like, oh, all the bones were disintegrated and charred like a crematorium. Yet they found household appliances and stuff that was still almost intact.
Yeah, not just that,
And
by the
different
way,
stuff.
but there's a reason why you go to a crematorium to get cremated
Yep.
is because you can't simply just get burnt to nothing
No.
on like a bonfire. It has to be at a very, very high grade that everything just goes. Even
Yeah.
like you see it in like other murder cases where people have tried to set fire to the victims and they leave behind things like teeth. And
Teeth are one of the because
the
they're
hardest
bones
things,
basically.
yeah, technically that are fixed into your skull, aren't they? So
Yeah.
I already I'm starting to get really big doubts on the whole thing, if I'm being honest.
Yeah. They went to a crematorium. Obviously, at the moment, to be honest, I would do this the moment it happened. The moment I disputed anything, I would go to a crematorium and be like, "Is this possible?"
Yeah.
They claim that bones. Hang on, bear with me. Yeah. So, but any bones remaining after this is after the flesh has been stripped away, which in itself takes a few hours.
Mm-hmm.
Any bones remaining would take up to 2 hours if the fire was burning at 2,000 degrees, right?
What? Yeah, it's hot.
Yeah. And their house was destroyed in 45 minutes. So their house was already burning and like the wood was beginning to like cinder and burn to ash after 45 minutes.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, really odd. I did a bit of research as well. And an average house fire, obviously this is back in 1945, so it may be less, it may be more, I'm not sure. But an average house fire burns at about 1,100 degrees.
Okay.
And it takes roughly between an hour to 2 hours for a body to burn, and another 3 to 4 hours for the bones to disintegrate and settle into ash, basically. Um, in me and Mum actually went to crematorium years ago, right?
Yeah.
And we had like a a tour around it, and I asked them, with an oven like that, how long does it take to burn a body completely to ash?
Mm.
And they said it usually takes roughly about 10 hours, right? And that's by
Wow.
today's standards. So, you know, that's what
Yeah.
I'm saying. Like, you don't have a house fire and not find body
Yeah,
parts.
I mean,
You
not to
don't.
make light of the situation of what's happened, right? But if you've got a
Mhm.
guy who can disintegrate a body in 45 minutes, you'd make a good killing as a crematorium.
Honestly, yeah.
Like
Hire the man.
considering today's standards, like you said, like we've got
Yeah.
everything now, and
Yeah.
if they're doing, if that happened within 45 minutes,
Hmm.
and it takes to today's standards 10 hours,
Mm.
what did they use? If it was true, if
Yeah.
it is true, what happened? What did they do?
Mm. There's a theory of what they might have used to set the fire as well, which
Okay,
if that was what they used, it might explain why there was no remains. However, it doesn't explain how there were survivors at all, let alone,
right.
you know, just a few. Um, so there after this is all at this point. This is all after the fire. There was a telephone repairman who told the family that their lines appeared to have been cut, not burned. They were fine. They seem to have been slashed and cut.
Right.
So the excuse of it being faulty wiring now goes out the window because
Mm-hmm.
the lines were cut, so the electric wasn't working, or like the wires that could have been tampered with or like sparked out couldn't have caused the fire because they were invalid basically because they were cut. Um. So yeah, so the power would have been dead by the time the fire had started. So once the lights went out, clearly this fire happened between when Jenny went to bed at around 12:30 and when the fire started, when they woke everyone up at about 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
Um, so their wires had been cut between that time, so it couldn't have been a wiring fault or an electrical fault. Um, so a witness came forward saying that they saw a man at the scene when the fire was blazing, that was taking a block and tackle used to remove engines from cars, and he could be seen around the scene
Mm.
basically with this equipment. And the family basically think that this is why the cars weren't starting. This is why the trucks weren't starting because the engines were tampered with. Um,
That's
they never,
very odd, though, isn't it?
yeah, it's really fucking odd, and they never go into like any detail about if they investigated their engines or not. But they think their engines were tampered with because they were working fine. Um,
Hmm.
so apparently Sylvia had one of their children had found a rubber object in the yard. And obviously, Jenny recalled hearing something hard hitting the roof and tumbling down. George thinks it was a napalm pineapple bomb from war.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So this would I'm in two minds about this, right? Because this would make sense as to why the fire burned so hot. However, and it also would explain because obviously the far right Italian group that clearly hated the family would have likely used this sort of equipment to deal with them, right? Because far right people are fucking morons.
Yeah.
Um, however, if it was a napalm bomb, how did any of them survive? This is my query. Like, napalm is a fucking powerful. There's a reason it's
Yeah.
illegal now, right?
Yeah. Yeah. The thing
Like,
they did in
there's
Vietnam
a
was
reason using
insane.
napalm is a fucking war crime
Yeah.
because it's so deadly. So I'm thinking if it was napalm, and if that was what she heard, like a grenade full of napalm going off, and that's what caused the fire, how did any of them survive? Um, So I'm not sure about that that specific theory about that's what might have caused the fire. I definitely don't think it was natural or electrical or anything like that. Someone must have done this because it's just fucking odd. And then after the fire and the investigation started, there came floods of reports. I've seen the kids. I've seen the 5 kids. I recognize their faces because there was basically a poster
Right.
that was up.
Yeah.
After the children went missing, they put up a poster with a $5,000 reward
Wow.
to say, if you've
That's a
seen these
lot
kids,
of money
please.
back then too.
Yeah, yeah, $1,000 for each kid. So basically, they were like, if you give us information, the information leads to us finding any of these kids, we'll give you money, basically. So there were reports of a woman said that she saw children that she thinks were the 5 Sodder children peeking out of a car whilst the fire was in progress, and the car was driving away from the scene. A woman at a tourist stop between Fayetteville and Charleston, about 50 miles west, said she saw the children after the fire, the morning after it happened, and
Yeah.
she, quote, I served them breakfast, she told the police. There was a car with Florida license plates at the tourist court too.
Okay.
Another witness at a hotel claims to have seen the children and recognized the children from their photos in the newspaper about 4 or 5 weeks after the fire happened. Quote, the children were accompanied by 2 women and 2 men, all of Italian extraction. She said in a statement, I do not remember the exact date. However, the entire party did register at the hotel and stayed in a large room with several beds. They registered about midnight. I tried to talk to the children in a friendly manner, but the men appeared to be hostile and refused to allow me to talk to the children. One of the men looked at me in a hostile manner. He turned around and began talking rapidly in Italian. Immediately, the whole party stopped talking to me. I sensed that I was being frozen out, and so I said nothing more. They left early the next morning.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So there have been, by all accounts, there have been confirmed sightings of these kids. So the kids were taken from this house, allegedly by people of Italian descent.
Yeah.
Now, I'm just wondering at this point why, regardless of whether like their dad is outspoken about their favorite right-wing dictator, why take the kids? And why just those 5? Why not all of them?
Yeah.
Like,
That's really, really odd. I mean,
yeah. And it's not as if they were the youngest either or the
no.
oldest. They were
I
just
was gonna say.
various ages.
I mean, so is that it for the story? Are we in speculation mode now? Have
No,
you
no,
got
no,
more?
no, no, no. We're not in speculation mode yet. There's a few bits and bobs to go yet.
Okay, do that bit before I
Um
go into what I think
okay.
happened.
Okay. Let's have a look. So, in 1947, both the parents, George and Jenny, sent a letter to the FBI. And they received a response from Hoover himself, who said, quote, although I would like to be of service, the matter related appears to be of local character and does not come within investigative jurisdiction of this bureau. Hoover's agents said that they would assist if they can get permission from the local, and this is the weirdest part. This is where it starts getting really fucking conspiracy like territory. Is the FBI said to the local authorities, we will help you. We will take over the case. We'll do whatever we want. We will help you with this case. All you got to do is say the word. And the local authority said no because they
Wow.
considered it done. And they were like, nope, it's fine. Um, so the private investigator they hired was named C.C. Tinsley. He discovered that the insurance salesman who had threatened George before the fire was a member of the coroner's jury that deemed the fire accidental. So he was on the committee that said the fire was purely accidental.
Okay, I'm
Um,
just saying this from my point of view now. This is
yeah.
going strongly to the case of who I think it is.
Okay. Right. Fair enough.
That's
Um,
weird.
he also heard a story. The private investigator heard a story, a rumor from some people about the fire department chief, F.J. Morris. Um, So, as you know, Morris claimed to have found no remains at all. Apparently, according to this private investigator, he confided in someone and said that he discovered, quote, a heart in the ashes. He hid it inside a dynamite box and buried it at the scene. Right?
Right.
Uh-huh. Tinsley then persuaded Morris. So Morris had confided in this private investigator to say that he found a heart at the scene, quote, a heart, buried it in the ashes. Morris actually showed this private investigator where he buried it, and they both dug it up together and took it to a funeral director. The funeral director then confirmed that it wasn't a fucking heart; it was beef liver,
Okay.
and it was untouched by the fire. It wasn't. It was planted there, and Morris had
Yeah.
said,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah." Morris had turned to the private investigator and said, "I was hoping, basically, and this is paraphrasing, but he was basically like, if they had found anything, they would drop the investigation. That's why I put it there. Because if they had found
Wow.
anything at all, they'd have been like, okay, that's remains. They died in the fire, and they would have left it alone. So someone in the fire department even wanted them to stop. Um,
Hmm.
over the next few years, there were various. There were obviously leads coming in left, right, and center. Oh, I've seen my kid in at school with these children. Apparently, there was a lead in New York that was convinced one of the kids that was taken in the fire was one of her friend's kids in New York. And this is how dedicated they were, right? And this is what a lot of people I've seen theories saying, "Oh, it must have been the parents," blah blah blah.
I don't think it is.
No, I don't think it is because every lead that came in, every tip they got, the parents themselves, George and Jenny, drove miles to investigate them themselves. They drove all the way to these leads, to these tips, to investigate it themselves so they could see the answers for themselves. Um, so they drove all the way to New York. Um, so the parent that said that their school children had, oh wait, hang on, no, it's not that. So there was a lead that in New York there was a woman who was convinced that one of them was. I'm getting confused. Hang on, bear with me. Okay, so George saw a newspaper photo, a clipping of a school child in New York, and was convinced one of them was Betty. Right.
Right.
He drove all the way to New York to basically try and get answers, but the parents refused to speak to him, which is kind of fair
Yeah,
because
it is.
a random bloke turning up at your door and being like, "That's my kid." Yeah, that's fair. In 1949, the Sodders decided to do a new search at the scene of the fire, and they brought in a pathologist from Washington D.C. named Oscar B. Hunter. The excavation was thorough and uncovered various small objects, damaged coins, and a partly burned dictionary. And here's the interesting part: several shards of a vertebrae, so spinal shards.
Yeah.
Hunter sent the bones to the Smithsonian Institution, which issued the following report. Now this gets a bit confusing, but I'll summary it in a second.
Okay.
The report is the following. The human bones consist of 4 lumbar vertebrae belonging to one individual. Since the transverse recesses are fused, the age of this individual at death should have been 16 or 17 years old. The top limit of age should be about 22, since the centra, which normally fuse at 23, are still unfused. On this basis, the bones show greater skeletal mutilation that one would expect for a 14-year-old boy, which is the oldest of the children that supposedly perished in the fire.
Right.
It is, however, possible, although not probable, for a boy 14 and a half years old to show 16 to 17 mutilation. So it's possible that this vertebrae could be attributed to the oldest 14-year-old boy who was supposedly perished in the fire. But this is the vertebrae found showed no evidence whatsoever that it was exposed to fire or flames. It was not charred. They were just bones. They were just fucking put there.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's and the report. continued and said, "It is very strange that no other bones were found in the alleged careful excavation of the basement of this house." Um, and it goes on to say, noting that the house reportedly burned for only about half hour or so, or 45 minutes, as it says in the report. It says, "One would expect to find the full skeletons of the 5 children rather than only 4 vertebrae." So basically, it was concluded that those bones might have already been in the soil and the dirt that George got and put over the thing as a memorial. Still
Okay.
weird that it's like a child's vertebrae that was in the dirt, but it was basically concluded that the vertebrae could not belong to any of the Sodder children.
Hmm.
The Smithsonian report prompted 2 hearings at the Capitol in Charleston, after which Governor Oki L. Patterson and the State Police Superintendent W.E. Burchett told the Sodders that the search was hopeless and declared it closed. They closed their case and was like, no, it's not worth it.
Hmm.
Now, all that put together, there's a weird fucking inside job conspiracy bullshit already happening here. So after this had happened, they put up a billboard with the picture of all of their 5 children for a $5,000 reward. After a little bit, they increased the amount to 10 grand. And so that billboard stayed there for a long time until Jenny died in 1989. A woman from St. Louis saying that the oldest girl, Martha, was a convent. Another tip came from Texas saying that there was a patron in the bar that was overheard saying a conversation about Christmas Eve fire in West Virginia, someone in Florida, and all of these tips, parents went to these states and they investigated themselves and they still didn't have any answers.
That's
All of the tips were
really
bollocks,
sad.
basically. Yeah, it's fucking awful. This is the slightly weird part because I don't know what to think about this.
Okay.
In 1968, 20 years after the fire, almost 20 years,
Yeah.
sorry, more than 20 years after the fire, Jenny got sent a letter. It was only addressed to her, and it was an envelope. The envelope was only addressed to her, and it was postmarked from Kentucky, right?
Hmm.
No return address, no nothing, just addressed to her from Kentucky. It was stamped from Kentucky. Inside was nothing but a photo of a man in his 20s with a cryptic handwritten note that read, "Louis Sodder, I love brother Frankie." For it said, well, in the article it says, I, boys. So I'm assuming that's 4. 4
Yeah,
boys.
4 boys, yeah.
But one of the I's is not capitalized, but I don't know if that's a grammar mistake or not. But anyway, A 90132 or 35. That's what it said on the back.
Okay.
Obviously, having, you know, seen this photo, Jenny and George genuinely believed this was their boy Louis.
Yeah.
And, it would be what he looked like because Louis was 9 at the time the fire happened. So, yeah, it was. They didn't ever get any answers from this, though. They kept the photo, but they never heard from anyone else from this again. Like,
Yeah.
so they did hire a private investigator to go to Kentucky to investigate this. They never heard from him again. He just disappeared. He fucked off.
Wow.
Whether that was a con man trying to get in on it, or whether he genuinely couldn't find anything and was like, or he was shut up by someone in Kentucky.
Yeah, but not just that. But you've gone to New York. You've gone to other places around the country. Why would you not go to Kentucky? If you had
Well,
evidence that this was like your son,
yeah.
and it was from Kentucky, you'd be on the first fucking plane out there.
Here's why they didn't. And it's the same reason as to why they didn't publish the letter. Because if it was Louis, they didn't want to put him in any danger. Because if they'd gone to Kentucky and it was him, whoever's keeping him might have harmed him, knowing the parents were in town.
Right.
So that's why they sent a private investigator, because they thought if someone goes looking around for him and it's not us, they might not hurt him because they don't know him. They don't know this private investigator.
I get that to an extent, but I mean,
Yeah.
if this is 20 years after it's happened, or over 20 years, sorry, it happened. Like, you've lived 20 years at this point without having your full family there. And me being me, if I had family members who would be in their adult years by this point, if not a bit more, you're coming with me, and we're gonna get your brother back. I'm sorry, I couldn't bear to see a family member of mine in Kentucky. And the fact that the whole thing of it is investigator may have been shut up, or he didn't go back. Basically, goes back to who I think done it.
Just hear him. Yeah,
that's.
I can't wait to hear what you think about this as well. Who done it?
Yeah.
So obviously, out of fear that Louis might be hurt by some sort of person, they didn't publish the letter, but they did update the billboard to include the adult photo of Louis.
Right.
To be like, if you've seen this man, this is what he looks like. In an interview shortly before in 1968, he said, "Time is running out for us, but we only want to know if they did die in the fire. We want to be convinced. Otherwise, we want to know what happened to them."
Right. Okay.
Unfortunately, George Sodder died a year later in 1968. So the interview was in 67. So in 1968, he did die. And he never found out what happened to his kids.
Wow.
Jenny erected a fence around her property and began adding rooms to her home and built layer after layer after layer between her and the outside. So she started basically isolating herself. Since the fire happened, Jenny Sodder wore black exclusively for the rest of her life. She refused to wear anything else as a sign of mourning.
That's really sad.
Yeah, it's really upsetting. She died in 1989, and the billboard finally came down around that time after she died. But her children and her grandchildren continue an investigation to this day, coming up with theories of their own. There's a theory that the local mafia tried to recruit him, and he declined.
Right.
He being George, I think. They tried to extort money from him, and he refused. The children were kidnapped by someone they knew. Someone who burst into the unlocked door, told them about the fire, and offered them a safe place to stay. They might not have survived the night. This is the article speaking now. It says they might not have survived the night. If they had, and if they lived for decades, if it really was Louis in that photograph, they failed to contact their parents only because they wanted to protect them.
Okay.
The youngest daughter.
I just got to jump in there just really quickly.
Yeah, go on.
I just got a message from Martin. I have got an ad delivery due at 7:05, apparently.
Oh God, okay.
So sorry about that.
It's all right. We'll try and like talk about it and wrap it up by then. If not, it's fine. The youngest daughter, Sylvia, who was 2 at the time of the fire, is now. This article was written in 2012, so she would be. What's that? She'd be 70. She'd be 80 at this point now. So she's 80 years old, and she still is convinced that the official reports that the fire was an accident is bullshit.
Yeah, I get that.
And she's still haunted to this day by what she saw when she was 2 on Christmas Day. So yeah, that's the case of the Sodder children.
Right.
Let me know what you think.
Yeah. Love it. It's up there with DB Cooper, in my opinion. It really is, because the thing about this that I'm actually grip more on this now than DB, because lives were supposedly taken, for one, because we don't know if they did. That's the thing for me, and I have to stress this enough. I'm not going to make a joke about this case because it's too dark for that stuff. But the thing that really upsets me the most about this is that it changes the whole family's trajectory of life. Like, George dies
100%.
not long, but a couple of years after. A couple of good years after. His wife then basically goes in mourning for the rest of her life and just wears black every day. It's fucking sad. However, what I will say, from what evidence, whatever has been given in the case that you spoke about, I honestly go down the mafia route more than what I thought I should. Why? And it's all there. The fact that they're trying to extort him on multiple times before Christmas Eve, and before that, leading up to it. So it seems like they're going back and back to try and get him, try and
Yeah,
get
and there was
something
like
out of him.
there were connections to people that shouldn't have been connected. Like the bloke who tried to sell them insurance, life insurance, was on the
Yeah,
committee that said it was an accident.
exactly.
Like there's deep-rooted institutional issues, meaning it's either a massive cover-up from the state or it's mafia.
Yeah, and going back in this time of the 40s, this is where you got people like Al Capone around still.
Yeah.
You've got this was a really big time for the mafia.
Yeah.
Who were doing dodgy dealings and had every governor and politician in their pocket because they would run them, because what they would literally do is turn around and say, well, you come on my payroll and you make sure that my guys don't get caught. Or if they do get caught, you sort of give them a bit of a slap on the wrist and say, get out. And while you're doing that, we'll give you all the votes that can get you back in office next year. It's mad. I think it's the fact, for one, that it's Christmas morning, early Christmas morning. There's a massive fire. The chief of the fire station are basically saying, doing that fire tree thing of ringing people around and whatever. They don't turn up till 7 hours after. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. By that point, I mean, by the time it's 4 o'clock, it's too much anyway. Even 2 o'clock is too much. Nothing is ever seen. There's odd accounts of these children being seen, especially that one with the 2 women and 2 men that basically was quite hostile to that lady.
When the hotel receptionist had seen the kids and was like, they are definitely who I think they are because I saw their picture and I saw the kids and I know it's them.
Yeah.
And then gave a statement to the police. That was 50 miles away.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was weeks after.
Yeah. I just think it's crazy. Very odd. I love the case. I'm going to be researching this one now, you bastard. It's one of those, isn't it, that I think the fact that they had the telephone call, and it seemed like there was a party going on, and they were asking for somebody who wasn't there. For me, that could be a motive to see to show the family are home and they know that they're going to be there that night.
Definitely.
The case of having that pineapple bomb, or some sort of I mean, if it was a pineapple bomb, a grenade, you would hear that motherfucker explode.
That's the thing. This is why I don't think it was actually a grenade that started the fire, because obviously with if a grenade was thrown on the roof, you'd hear the thud, you'd hear it roll down, and then the thing that would wake you up wouldn't be the smoke; it would be the grenade going off.
Yeah, exactly.
But then again, we will never find out if there even was a grenade, because the house was ash.
Yeah, that's true.
It was gone in 45 minutes. So even if there was like a blast in the roof, we wouldn't know.
Yeah,
but then again, the casing for the grenade would be. Oh wait, no, because pineapple bombs are shrapnel.
Yeah, pineapple bombs are shrapnel. Yeah, the only thing that I could think it would be, I don't know if they even had this back in them sort of days, but thermite is relatively quiet, right? So it fizzles and makes a flame, whereas a pineapple bomb explodes. It's a shrapnel grenade. So the fact that they heard something roll from the roof, I mean, if you heard that, you get up and I mean, we do it now at home. Like, we hear a noise, and I'm either up or Martin's up, looking at it, and know that we've
any
got
noise
the dog.
at all, I'm straight up.
Yeah, even the dog would like go and see what's going on. But I'm very the fact that they were teased almost 20 years after, or more than 20 years after it happened, by a photo of what is allegedly their son. I think
it's
that's
whether
sickening.
or not the son sent them that, or it was the people who had his son.
Yeah, that's another thing, right?
Yeah, because I think what the article implies that the parents thought was that it was the son that had sent them that secretly, without anyone knowing. They had sent that, he'd sent the photo to them.
Yeah.
And basically gone, if you can, come find me. If not, please don't.
Yeah. That's true. I mean,
it's the codes and the handwriting. I don't like the numbers. What the fuck did that mean?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at the children who went missing, and you've got there's only 2 boys that went missing. The rest were girls.
Yeah.
So that whole thing being 4 boys,
Does it make sense? Because there's
No.
5 children who went missing.
And it also says it mentions a Frankie, but Frankie was never one of the children that were taken. Now, what if the note was talking about the family that he's with?
Yeah, maybe.
Because he could have been, maybe he could have been adopted. Maybe he could have been found after he was kidnapped and taken in.
Maybe.
It's just very strange because he was a 9-year-old when this happened.
Yeah,
So
that's the thing. But when you're 9, I think
he was
even
really young.
Yeah, even then though, like surely there's got to be something that they remember.
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? It's weird. The case is mind-boggling. But the fact that the mob want to kidnap children. Now, I get like going back in time. The mob was known for extortion. Like, you pay them protection money so they would come and broke their business, even though no one was going to break their business. It was one of those things that you did.
Yeah.
I'm going on the fact that it is George, isn't it, the dad?
Yeah.
I'm going on the fact that guy was basically dissing Mussolini, and people knew about it. And I'm just getting that thing of, do people who's overhearing it, are they not liking the fact that their children are going to grow up to resent Mussolini as well, even though what he did was ridiculous during the war and whatever?
And
but
I think in terms of like, because the community that he was in, and going off the mafia theory that you have as well, it might have been that it might not be mafia, but it might have been a local gang. Who
could have been anything.
Like,
it could have been a subsidy gang that they had they would do stuff for the mob but not be affiliated with the mob. Especially being
also
in that
had
sort of like one-horse town
in the
local
area. Authority.
I just find it weird that everyone sort of shrugged it off as to be, it was wires, or it was this, or even the fire bloke basically put in a heart, but it was beef liver or whatever, and cow liver. Sorry.
I find it fucking insane that the local authority was like, no, we don't need to look into this, when they're like, 5 children died in this fire. The lack of evidence itself is evidence, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't just conclude, 5 kids died in that fire, but we can't find any sort of remains, no teeth, no bones, no nothing of their remains. And we definitely know that it was it was due to the fire that they died. And the wiring, then being like, oh no, it's just faulty wiring. The wires were cut.
Yeah.
Like, evidence itself shows that the wires were cut.
Yeah, and not just that, but you've got the wires cut, you've got the ladder missing, you've got the trucks not working, you've got everything else in between. That is just not on their side that night, and it's far from coincidental.
And I've seen theories saying that the trucks didn't work because it was cold weather, because the bucket of water was frozen. It's like, okay, so why were they working the day before then?
Yeah, but
he must have used them the morning of Christmas Eve.
You can't really make that an assumption, because if you look at, like, say New York, for instance, right? That place is drowned in snow, like at Christmas time sometimes.
Yeah.
And even back in the early 40s, they were using like the old cars, like taxis were and whatever. They never there was never sort of anything in history saying they broke down because the weather was too cold.
Yeah, exactly. They were traversing all sorts of weather in the city, and he'd have been using those trucks earlier in the day, and he used them the day before.
Yeah, and they're used for his job, so they're going to be used to being in harsh terrain, right? So I can't get behind that. I think, me personally, very sad case. The family are never going to get this solved, I don't think. If they do,
the only apparent surviving. The only surviving member of the family we know of is one of the ones that survives, and she's 80 at this point.
Yeah,
I don't even think she's still alive.
She may not be. No matter what, it's sad, and whether they do get it solved, I hope they do for the sake of just the family. And it goes with the same thing of, well, it's not the same thing, but it goes with like the DB Cooper case, right? It's the case that if they ever do get solved, time's gone. You can't get it back.
Yeah, no, you can't. Just found out. She googled it. Sylvia Sodder died 2 years ago.
Really?
2021. Yeah. So that's it now.
So
unless
that
like her
timeline's gone.
children and her grandchildren like advocate for this case, all of the Sodder family, as far as we are aware, public knowledge, they're all dead.
Gone. Yeah, it's sad. It is really
It's
sad.
really sad.
I mean, that is, 2 cases that we
Bit of a
picked,
depressing one to
everyone.
end on, but
It is, but the thing is, though, like, you need them, I think, to realize what's important in life. And unfortunately, this was just a family who was sort of randomly picked and targeted. And they've had to live with this, rest of their life. It's sad. It really is. But, it's again, if anybody's got this far, we've gone on. We're at the 2-hour mark, which is great. But if anybody has their sort of inklings and comments on what you think happened, just put them in the comments, guys, and we can talk about it. And
shove your theories down there.
Yeah, and if there's anything that we really like, maybe it will go on to the next episode. We can discuss what you think. But yeah, I just think really good unsolved cases. I'm gonna have to be looking into this one a bit more. Just because I want to see what else there probably is. There probably isn't anything else. You probably covered everything.
As far as I researched, I've covered absolutely everything that there is to find. Like they found nothing since.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll look into a little bit more, see if I can find anything more. But
I mean, you've covered everything from the seams of it.
That is everything.
Yeah. I think so. I mean, really, really good 2 different episodes. 2 different cases for this episode 2. Next week, like TJ said earlier in the podcast, it's going to be conspiracy theories. So I'll be looking at what one I want to do for that one.
We're going to be going down some weird rabbit holes with these episodes.
It's going to be longer than 2 hours. We're gonna actually have to do that when we both got a day off.
We're also going to have to try and streamline it because like podcast I know is 2-hour podcast is not bad.
But the thing is, we're not.
We'll find a way to streamline it.
We're not doing like a Joe Rogan-y thing where it's got a whole setup. We're just talking about cases. I think that's the best way to be because I don't know anything about this case. I've not researched anything about this case. I just think from what's been said in the time frame of what happened, it seems very much like it came from a mob point of view.
I think so.
I just think it's very odd. Sad for the family.
And that's the thing that intrigues me the most about Unsolved Mysteries, and we will wrap it up soon because you do have a delivery. But it's like, regardless of how like sad it is, and even in some cases, it's not this one specifically, but in some unsolved cases can be funny. But what intrigues me the most is the fact that like, despite all of the evidence that we have, we will never find out what happened.
Yeah,
but to either of these cases, we will never find out who DB Cooper was, and we will never find out what happened to those 5 kids.
And I think the saddest thing for me is the fact that this family, whenever they got an inkling of information that could result in getting at least one of their kids back, they went for it. And these poor people, they must have literally been hanging on a thread every time they had something. And the one thing for me that I would never get over as a parent would be the fact that you'd sent someone to go and find your son, allegedly, who sent this photo, and you never got in contact with them ever again. That, for me, would bring alarm bells to the max.
Yeah, that would be freaking me the fuck out, to be honest. But the parents, the Sodder parents, George and Jenny, and this is a comment to have the podcast end on. All kudos to them because they did more than the fucking McCanns did. Am I right? Fuck you. They did it. Anyway,
that's the thing to end on, isn't it?
Take notes, McCann family. Take notes.
I just added that, by the way. They didn't make a book and tried to make a lot of money out of it either.
No, they fucking didn't. No, they fucking didn't.
Maybe that could be my conspiracy theory next week.
Maybe.
Yeah. Maybe you made one for me there.
Yeah.
Right, great.
Wrap this up.
So thank you for everyone for listening. We're G&T Podcast. Just put things below. Whatever. If there's cases you want us to research as well, please put it down below.
Yeah. If you've got an interesting case that you think would be ideal for the podcast, or if you think that you specifically want answers about something that's intrigued you, just put it in the comments. And we'll try and look into it, and we'll try and pick it up on an episode. I'm thinking we'll talk about this afterward, but I'm thinking this is not concrete, but I have an idea that we could set up a Google form,
okay,
that people can fill out And if they've got a case that they want us to look into, they can just send it our way. We can look
Nice.
through it and basically get submissions from the audience and be
Yeah.
like, "Oh, this case looks interesting. Let's do this."
That's cool.
But,
I know
yeah,
I do at one point. I do want to make a Discord that they can just come and chat and just put things up, and we can just
Yeah,
put little
be cool.
pictures of us working on stuff. But yeah, until next week, everybody. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Have a fantastic.
Thank you if
week.
you've gone this far.
Yeah, thank you if you
Yeah.
got this far. It's a long podcast tonight. It's very long.
And for those of you who did get this far, we're watching you. We know that you're on the toilet, or that
Yeah.
you're playing games in the
Yeah.
background, or that you're doing other things. But it's greatly appreciated as long as you've heard us
Yeah.
and listened.
Yeah,
We
and listen
appreciate
to our bullshit for the last 2 hours.
And for those of you who didn't get this far, you won't hear this anyway.
No.
Haha.
Yeah. Yeah. Screw you guys.
Yeah, screw you guys.
But yeah, again, thank you. It's much appreciated. We're literally just two brothers who are just discussing things we would just talk on the phone.
Yeah.
So it's just that way that we just thought.
It's an
fuck it.
insight to our phone conversations at this point.
Well, yeah, why not?
So the FBI don't even need to tap our phones because
No,
we're
they don't.
doing it on YouTube.
Yeah, go. Yeah, FBI, go and follow us. G&T Podcasts. Your name's on there so many times in this episode. So it's basically a shout out at this point.
After this episode, they'll probably have live hearings of us anyway.
Yeah,
So they won't
they're
need to
gonna-
subscribe. They'll hear it live.
They're gonna come to work
Yeah.
and tap my phone, and
I'm gonna get asked. People are gonna get asked questions. Have you seen a TJ? That works at this place.
yeah, this is
And
where
it's
I
just a
start
guy in a
like
black suit.
getting random mail, and like my boss gets a letter saying they got to do a drug test on me and whatever, and it's just like, okay, I don't know what
Stop
that's
talking
happening.
shit about the FBI.
Yeah. Or I'll do to you what the McCanns did to Maddie. Right. Have a
on that note,
fantastic evening, and we will see you all next week for another episode of G&T Podcast.
bye bye.
Bye, everyone.